I'm resentful at the University of Toronto or TMU or York University or whatever school you go to. You could be like, this school has not helped me and it's holding me back and I've wasted all this money and time.
Most people use their resentment as a justification for their misery, and they externalize the responsibility. Again, it just goes back to that simple question of, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? So hello, everybody. We're back,
everyone.
Right? Back for...
Mike, you miraculously have a new shirt on.
I know. Look at and I think my beard is different length.
Oh, yeah. I'm wearing the same shirt.
David is like Mark Zuckerberg.
He wears the same shirt. Clothes. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm trying to get there too. I have about 10 white t-shirts okay. So we're continuing our discussion around resentments.
So we defined what resentment is.
Mm-hmm.
Where were we in the template?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
So you put this together. Yeah.
We read through here, right? Putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. We resolutely looked for our own mistakes. And we chose a broad term because this is very common in young people today in particular.
Okay.
I'm resentful at capitalism, right? So list all people, places, things, institutions, ideas, or principles with whom you are angry, resent, feel hurt, or threatened by. Okay, then we decided, it's unfair and greedy and self-serving. I went to university, got a degree, can't get a good paying job that I think I deserve.
Right.
That's a good one, right? I think that's pretty common.
It's fair. Oh, totally.
Okay. And so then we went through the list of like, what part of ourself is hurt or threatened by this resentment?
Right.
So what we're trying to learn is it's not per se bad that we feel hurt or threatened.
Yeah.
It's what we do with the resentment and with the emotional impact on us that matters.
Right.
And most people tend to, when this goes bad, right? Or when we get stuck in resentment, most people use their resentment as a justification for their misery, and they externalize the responsibility, right? So because capitalism is impacting my security, my emotional security, my pride, my self-esteem, my ambitions, my relationships.
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything.
I can't control it. It's something bigger than me. Okay.
Therefore, why would I work harder to get a better job?
Right.
Or why would I humble myself and go work part-time or go work for minimum wage or whatever?
Right.
Why would I go mow lawns, or why would I go pick up, here's an example, was outside the office here today. Mm-hmm. There was a huge pile of shit.
Like dog poop.
It looked like dog. It could have been human poo, but it was almost like too big to be human poo. It was a fucking giant pile of shit.
Oh, wow.
And in my head, my initial reaction was like, what the fuck? Like, what asshole either let their dog shit here or actually shat here?
Yeah. And
furthermore, like, why are the people who've come to work earlier than me not done anything about it? Like, it was literally in front of the stairs going so any client could step in it and come in and whatever, or whoever.
Yep.
And of course, in my mind, as I've been practicing my spiritual fitness lately, the discussion goes, I could sit here and be resentful at the person who let their dog shit here and not clean it up, or I can be resentful to the people in this office for not cleaning it up, or I could take responsibility and just pick it up.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Right.
I got a garbage. I got a garbage bag. I got some some paper towels and some leaves, and I just went outside and it was gross. And it's disgusting.
Yeah, of course.
And I just went and I picked it up and I threw it in the garbage. So that is me on a good day and a good moment of acknowledging my initial reaction of resentment and avoidance of responsibility. I processed that, I let it go, and then I picked it up. So it's a bit of a side note, but I think it's a good example of this.
So feeling resentful or annoyed with other people's inaction is often a natural feeling.
Yes.
The question you're at a crossroads and you're like, all right, well, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to go down resentment road or am I going to go down responsibility road?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so in this situation, you took the responsibility. You're like, all right, I'm just going to clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And
take some responsibility for a mess that you have no idea who created it. It could have been
exactly. Yeah. And picking up shit is at the bottom of the realm of what we deem prestigious behavior, right? It's like we need to be able to humble ourselves and just do the right thing. And I'm not always perfect, of course. Like, I'm not trying to suggest that I'm this perfect example of that, but in that moment, I did a good job. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And so
the question that we're going to be engaging with right now is, how do we've identified the cause of our resentment, which could be different for different people.
Yeah.
We've identified the things that are threatened or hurt, like maybe more of the micro emotions that come from that cause. So in this case, self-esteem, pride, etc., all those on the list that you can see. And now the big question is, okay, what do we do with it? We're at that crossroads.
Yeah.
How do we avoid this sort of the cycle of resentment and instead start to take action to make us feel more empowered?
Excellent.
In our life. Okay.
So in some sense, we put the mirror up to ourselves, right? So all the great psychological, spiritual traditions are very adamant about, this is not about the world, this is about you. And we need to learn to put up the mirror in front of our face and see what is it about us that's contributing to this problem.
Right.
Or this resentment or this life circumstance that we find unacceptable.
Right.
And maybe just a little insight on that is, part of what happens is that as we develop as young children and adolescents, is that to survive and to develop a somewhat healthy, cohesive ego state, we have to suppress all the negative things about ourselves. Not all of them, but we sort of need to pretend they're not there so that we can develop a healthy sense of self. At least that's how I understand sort of that theory. Which I think makes sense. And so then the trick is that as adults, we need to learn to then be able to see that we're not perfect, or we are flawed and we have flaws, and that's okay, right? That's what makes us a human being. So that's what this part is for. And that's also what a lot of people have a hard time with and they never mature out of, okay? Is that like, it's always someone else's fault, right? Or I can always blame somebody else for this situation.
Right.
Okay. So if we were this avatar, okay, so we're resentful at capitalism because it's unfair, greedy, self-serving.
Yeah.
I played by the rules. I got a degree. I did all the things I was told to do, but my life isn't, I don't have a good paying job. So when you stew in that resentment, which of these shortcomings is true?
Resentful at capitalism, it's hurting my life. It's attacking my self-esteem, my emotional security, my relationships. Because of this resentment, I'm now starting to lie.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm becoming selfish and self-obsessed, and people owe me things and everything should be about me.
Yes.
I'm worried.
Yeah. Frightened. Yeah. Like fear. Frightened. Jealousy, actually, I added.
I'm jealous of the success of others. And
that's not a standard AA one. Actually, I added that myself. But anyway, yeah.
And then I'm inconsiderate. Like I'm less sensitive to the feelings of others. I'm less able to help other people because I'm so upset and so selfish and dishonest and
or it could be something like, in this context, it's not maybe totally applicable, but it's like, I don't acknowledge the efforts of others, or I don't acknowledge the fact that there is a set of rules and things, however unfair they are, but I don't consider that applicable to me. So it can be inconsiderate as just a lack of perspective. And it can also be inconsiderate of, if I'm resentful, say it's like, I'm resentful to the hiring manager who didn't hire me because they're a reflection of capitalism.
Through the system.
Yeah.
Personified.
I'm not being considerate of the fact that this person has a job to do, or I'm not a good candidate, right? Like, no wonder they didn't choose me because I showed up entitled and self-righteous and whatever. So that's a potential application of the inconsiderateness towards another person.
Right.
But let's go back. Okay. So dishonest. So if you're blaming your situation on capitalism, chances are you're being dishonest, or you're lying to yourself about many things.
Right. What you've done and haven't done.
Yes.
Right.
So it doesn't.
An example.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean, again, that capitalism has its faults and there's all that kind of stuff. It just means that you are not acknowledging the full picture. So, for example, I had all kinds of resentments towards that capitalism when I did this my first time. So my dishonesty was, I was a drug addict, first of all. Okay. So that's one part. And as a result of being a drug addict, all my attention was focused on staying and getting high all the time. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the qualities that I would need to exhibit to be hired, to be employable, to be quote unquote successful in the world were not there. Who am I to think that I deserve something when I'm acting like this way? Mm-hmm. So that's one form of dishonesty, lying to myself, right, about the reality of my situation. Right. So I did go to university. I did check all those boxes, but my degree was in political science. So there's another maybe form of dishonesty. It's like, well, right. I chose to study political science and nobody hires people with poli-sci degrees or yeah, professor of political science over here. So that, I think that's a form of dishonesty. I'm lying to myself about the variables or factors contributing to the fact that I don't have a good paying job that I think I deserve.
Right. So is the dishonest bit, you lied to yourself about your own behaviors, all the things that were actually getting in the way of you getting a job. Like maybe you weren't on top of job postings.
Yep.
Maybe in the jobs you applied for, you were lazier than you should have been in terms of putting the right, address on your cover letter.
Yes. Or maybe had grammatical spelling mistakes in my,
So you're like, oh, that's not, you wouldn't reflect on those. You wouldn't identify them. Not you, but our character, our avatar. So that's a version of dishonesty, not being aware of the mistakes we're making that get in the way of us being successful or getting the job we want or the job offer, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then a little example of another for me was as a kid, I remember on my resentment inventory, I wrote something like, the guy who owned the corner store near my school, I was resentful at him because he accused me of stealing one day. And of the 20 days that I actually did steal shit, that day I didn't steal something. So that's a form of dishonesty, right? Like, who the fuck is this guy to accuse me of stealing today? But really, he just tried to catch me one day and chose the wrong day. Right. So that's total dishonesty on my part, right?
Right. You knew he was right. Yeah. But in that moment, he was wrong. But overall, he was right.
Right. And so then I use that as a justification for like, how dare this person?
Yeah. The world's against you. Or this guy's against you. Yeah. Okay.
Which is so sickening. But that's what happens to people. A couple of ways that's defined. Selfish can be sort of self-obsessed, ruminating. Like I'm always thinking about myself. Always this about me. It's about me. It's about me. It's about me. So that's in the thought pattern, form of thoughts. Another way selfish is like, I have 10 chocolates and you ask me for one and I say, fuck no. Right. So I'm hoarding, almost like I'm keeping things for myself.
Right.
And in terms of this is, for addiction and alcoholism, often addicts and alcoholics will hoard
the resources that they're addicted to.
Yeah. Right. Not always. Okay. But that's possible. So is this person, again, we're using the context of the capitalism. This person is obsessing over themselves and perhaps not thinking about all the things that capitalism does do for people, or can't see beyond their own self-centeredness. It's just like, this is all about me. Right. I can't get a job. Poor me, poor me, poor me. Capitalism's out to get me.
Right.
The world's against me. I'm a victim, basically.
Right. As opposed to thinking in terms of how can I, like, one way you can address the ills of capitalism is by taking steps to help others who are negatively affected by it.
Yeah.
How do you start working with homeless people? How do you start working with different marginalized communities, those who don't have the educational skills to compete for the jobs that they want for reasons that are not necessarily fault of their own, due to poverty or broken homes?
Yep.
So is that like selfishness gets in the way of you actually addressing some of the problem, maybe the legitimate problems that you've identified in our economic system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Another on the flip side of that might be, I often think about this. I'm so fascinated by the psychology of people that are exorbitantly wealthy, right? It's due to the fruits of capitalism, you're exorbitantly wealthy. Like, why don't we put some of that money to use to help people? Yep. Right. So there's another side of it there too. Like, and in fairness, many wealthy people do give away tons of cash. So whatever the incentives are for that doesn't matter. Like, again, it's like, at least you can acknowledge that they do that. So yeah, this person again is just thinking about me. And I think in the self-seeking context, it's similar. Like, rather than again going to the bottom of the totem pole, self-seeking is sort of this idea of trying to like skip to the front of the line in a grocery store, or not letting somebody walk in front of you in the line who has 2 items. You have 20. Because you're looking out for your own interest. Oh, I got to go. Like, my time's more valuable.
Right.
That kind of
just
idea.
Being totally unaware of other people's struggles.
Yeah.
Around you.
Or only another example might be maybe you show up to a job interview and you, to use this context, right? And you discover that the interview office has like moved, or there's a notice up that says, your interview is supposed to be on the 3rd floor in room 4, but it's actually moved to the 6th floor in room 6 or whatever. And then you see someone else searching for the room of the interview, right? You see another candidate show up and you think, oh, I could help this person. They're confused. Or I could purposely avoid helping them so that I have a greater chance to get the job.
Okay. So how would you distinguish, why isn't selfishness the same as self-seeking?
Yeah, I think the general, I do think it's very similar. The general gist is selfish is self-absorbed thoughts.
Okay.
And hoarding things, objects.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to give you a beer. I don't have any beer left. Go away.
Right.
Or I don't have any drugs left. Go away. Self-seeking is the drug dealer only has half an ounce left. I'm going to buy it all.
Right.
So that you can't have any. Or I'm not going to give you the drug dealer's phone number because my needs are better than, or I'm not going to tell you where the employment office is.
When you were struggling with addiction, did you feel some of these thoughts?
For sure. I think it was, the thoughts were more around maintaining my supply to consumption. So, and I think that's just the easiest, most clear example to give. Yeah, it would be, depending on who the person was, if I knew they would reciprocate, but it was sort of, no, I don't have any left, or I only have a tiny bit left. Can you give me some of yours? Because I don't want to run out. Right. Those kind of things. That would probably be how it would unfold.
Did you feel like it played out in your sort of other like you'd be selfish towards
I think so.
I think so. Or random people, like the example in the grocery store.
Just
maybe unaware. You weren't even thinking you weren't doing anything wrong. It's just like less awareness.
Yeah, probably less awareness and more dishonesty. Right.
Yeah.
Deluding myself into thinking that my behavior was justifiable.
Right.
Because I mattered or whatever. We come up with all kinds of rationalizations. Right.
Right.
Okay. And really the point of this, the details and specifics are useful and can be insightful, but the main point of this is to really smash into our heads that we're responsible for our shit. So I don't have to figure it out too thoroughly. I need to recognize that, yes, I'm being selfish and seeking my own needs.
Right.
And I just need to drill that into my head.
Right. And then address it by going to help someone else or accommodate someone else or put someone before yourself.
Yeah. Or just to simply just be honest with myself about my behavior. I think that's a big part of the beginning is just to recognize, holy moly, I am so dishonest to myself. I'm lying to everybody. I'm lying to myself. I'm lying to this person, or I'm telling half truths, right? Or I'm rationalizing some situation, or I'm angling to get my needs met. So,
Mike, do you want to talk about how to overcome or address or how to address these shortcomings, or do we want to continue on?
Well, let's finish this off and then so just again,
so
for
what's
the
the
sake
frightened? Okay. So addiction, not addiction, resentment can lead us to be dishonest to others and to ourselves.
Yes.
It can make us selfish and self-seeking.
Yeah.
How can it also make us scared? Like what is the resentful person scared of?
Right. I think there's often a binary presented, right? Love or fear.
Yeah.
Which does encompass much of human endeavors. And so I think frightened here, well, they're all relevant, but I think frightened is usually the most common one. So this person here is just scared. They're scared that they won't get their needs met in a capitalist society or in their society they exist in.
Yeah.
And without learning how to deal with that fear, it's just so much easier to blame everybody and everything around you.
So so sometimes fear is legitimate. So if I'm not, if I had a poli-sci degree, not getting the job that I want, I'm like, I can't pay my rent. I can't, or I'm going to let my parents down. I can't buy food. Why is that kind of fear a shortcoming in this case?
Right. It's only a shortcoming when you don't acknowledge it and that you stew in the resentment. So if it's, I'm fearful I can't get a job and pay my rent, and it's because of capitalism, and you externalize your responsibility onto other people in the world, then it keeps you. It could also be a fear of facing your own inadequacies, right?
Right.
There's the internal fear too of, wow, I actually have to acknowledge that I'm not as capable as I've deluded myself to think I am.
Right. Like I understand why people don't want to hire me.
Yeah.
I'm not very good. Right.
Yeah.
That's just, being frightened and being dishonest are often related.
For sure.
Like it takes a lot of confidence to be honest with one's, or to be direct with their.
It could be confidence or humility, or it's a combination, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So certainly this person is frightened, right? How am I going to live my life? How am I going to get my needs met? Like, what am I going to do? Like, this is crazy.
Right.
We'll take out jealousy. I inserted that for somebody else specifically the other day. Okay. But so let's go back, because that's not actually on the AA sheet originally.
So inconsiderate, sorry to jump, but how, okay, so I thought that would fall under either selfish or self-seeking, but maybe you're seeing there's another layer.
Yeah, well, maybe in the resentment towards capitalism, inconsiderate, maybe it doesn't apply. So it doesn't always, all of them don't always have to apply.
Okay.
And so, why don't we, we can skip that for here. I think that's fair.
Okay.
Right? We discussed maybe how it could apply here, but.
Okay, so so we have this resentful avatar. They're upset with the economic system. It's getting in the way in their mind, getting in the way of them achieving some work, some life success.
Yeah.
It's an attack on their relationships, on their pride, on their self-esteem, sense of self. As a result, they're becoming dishonest, self-obsessed, self-seeking. They're fearful of their future. Maybe they're fearful of addressing their own internal turmoils and limitations.
Yep.
Okay. So we've all probably been here in one way or the other to varying degrees. How do we get out of it? How does someone get out of this situation?
Yeah. So
is that the next step, or is there something else before?
Yeah, no, I think, the process is so we're only going through one example. The aim is to go through many examples and to see the pattern emerge that we are externalizing our shortcomings, our fears, our problems onto other people in the world. And so the first and most important part is simply to recognize that that's what you're doing. You are not taking responsibility for your part in situations. And that's making you sick and resentful and angry and ineffective and all those kind of things. Because it's on the top of my mind right now, as an example, I don't remember if I probably did bring it up in the first part of this, but Anna Lemke said doing this helped her so much with her resentments to her mother, because she said literally a decade of psychotherapy actually entrenched her resentments to her mother because she wouldn't see how she contributes to it. Right. She could never, it was just simply, let's blame mom, let's point out all her faults and blah, 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 blah. And so Anna Lemke recognized through this process that, again, whether or not her mom is ABC, she plays a part in it as well.
Right.
And if she can acknowledge that, it's sort of this step or this process is it's like an unburdening. We stop burdening ourselves with all these worries and like resentments and frustrations because we recognize that it's really not about what we're lying to ourselves that it is about. It's not about capitalism per se. It's about my inability to recognize my part in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we regain some agency and control or some power.
So it's an over-identification with a victim mentality.
Basically, yeah.
And one can be legitimately victimized. So it's not, you're not saying that people are never wronged and people don't have a right to be upset at how they're treated by others or government or a corporation or someone doing hiring. All that stuff is real. We wrong people all the time, on purpose, unintentionally, whatever. It's more like when you're unable to maybe not rise above it, but work through it in a productive way where you can wake up in the morning and say, yes, I've been wronged in so many ways. And part of me is upset that that's happened, but I'm not going to let that define my day. I'm going to allow, I have enough in me and enough energy in me or enough, the right attitude, the right perspective to help me wake up in the morning, get out of bed and start to be good to other people, to treat myself with honesty and integrity, to try to address some of my own limitations.
Yes.
To seek the opportunities I think are going to be most beneficial to me and my community. Is that where
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so really where this kind of goes to next, what can I learn about self and others?
So can I just, what did you skip over? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Unmet. Okay.
Yeah. This is
more the introspection.
Yeah. This is, okay. I've added this sort of psychotherapeutically and whether I'm lying or not, one day I'll do a PhD and write a book about the 12 steps and the therapeutic value of them. Right. So this is my attempt at starting to build that.
Okay.
But it is important to acknowledge how, again, this is not part of AA, but another layer to this is just what are my unmet needs here? And it's important to be able to acknowledge those. And then on top of taking responsibility for our resentments, we can start to address some of the other layers of unmet needs.
What I find interesting, just from a bit of an outsider's perspective, is how in-depth the introspection is. Like, if you notice, like I've asked a few times, like, all right, like, okay, we've identified our problems. Let's get on. Give me some solutions. You're like, well, hold on. There's actually more probing. So why do we need to get into so much depth about, why can't it just be enough? Like, I'm selfish, I'm self-obsessed, and I'm not nice, and I'm inconsiderate. Like, why can't that just be enough? And then like, all right, here, 4 or 5 things to do with it. Like, why do we need such an in-depth engagement with how we're feeling, why we're feeling that way, what's unmet, how we're treating others, how we're thinking, what our internal narratives are, et cetera, et cetera. Like, why do we need to stew in that for so long? Why can't you just give me some solutions already?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I think sometimes what you just said is enough. We don't need to do all this introspection all the time. And I think it's a fair observation of maybe societally right now, or the sort of therapizing of everything in today's world in some sense, or the sort of, because I have a mental health problem, I'm deserving of whatever it is.
Right.
So I do think there's a bit, sometimes that can go too far, like too much introspection, too much compassion, too much, or maybe empathy is a better word, too much. Sometimes it's just simply, you're being a dick, or you're being a whiny little shit. Get over it. Stop being such a complainer and take some fucking responsibility for your life and get out there.
And it's also right. So we can ruminate on our problems and start to over-identify with them, and they become like our identity. Like, oh, we have these things.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there's probably a balance to be drawn. Like, you want to really understand yourself and be as honest as you can about yourself, but there's a limit. So if you feel like, you're starting to just do too much probing.
Yeah.
So maybe we spoke about this in previous podcasts, but there's the idea of the partially examined life, not the fully examined life. Yeah. Like if you fully examine your life, you probably can't take action and you probably can't function. So you want to partially examine your life, identify a few flaws, occasionally address them, and then move forward.
Yeah.
I guess to be action oriented in your life, you can't be too introspective, because that might lead to inadvertent self-obsession.
Yeah.
And just constantly trying to be true to oneself without actually doing anything.
Right. Yes. Okay. And I think it can also
loving therapy as opposed to loving not having to go to therapy and loving, helping others and being productive for others.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think that is another component of how you might move beyond the over identification with self.
Right.
I think a valid criticism of sort of AA can be the over identification with this idea that I'm an alcoholic.
Because there's so many steps dedicated to just understanding one's addiction.
No, more so just like people get the same way that with people identify with this victim narrative, people will sort of identify with this sense of being an alcoholic and what that means.
Right.
And an unhealthy version of that is I'm a self-centered, selfish, resentful alcoholic. Therefore, if I just beat that into my head over and over, somehow I'll be progressing in my life kind of idea. It's like that becomes an identity. So the same way you identify as a victim, the world's out to get me, then people often get identified with this idea that they're an alcoholic and they're self-centered and they're selfish and they're, beyond repair in some sense.
Oh, so it keeps them stuck. It actually prevents them.
I think so. Yeah. Like they can make great progress and they can stop drinking and they can be of service to the world. But I do think, spiritually speaking, perhaps, and often AA is referred to as spiritual kindergarten. I do think we can learn more about ourselves, or we can learn more about the human condition than just simply all the things that we learn in AA. Like these things that we learn in AA are very tailored to helping people snap out of being addicts and alcoholics and to be of service to the world and helpful.
Like it's about truly shedding the identity of an addict, not just shedding the behavior.
Yes. And that can be tricky. And sometimes that's one of the criticisms is that people then start to identify with kind of all their negative shortcomings or defects of character.
Right.
And they sort of wear that as a badge.
And I can see like you might not want to shed the addict identity because that's your community. Like if I'm no longer an addict or if I'm no longer an alcoholic, I guess I'm not really part of AA anymore, but AA are my friends. AA are the people who have helped me. So how do you, or I'm a victim like everyone else and I can be part of them. Once I stop thinking like a victim, maybe I don't connect with my friends in the same way. So these social dynamics can actually keep us stuck.
Yeah. That's
at least can create an incentive to hold on to an identity that might not, or an attitude that actually might not be useful for us.
So I think a helpful way in AA, just to keep with the analogy, is when you're in a meeting, you identify as an alcoholic to sort of keep cohesive group norms and keep the group functioning. But where a lot of people maybe get stuck is that when they leave the room, they carry this identity with them.
Right.
And they go out into the world. And again, it can be complicated and maybe being specific is more helpful. But as a general a way of it is that, sometimes people get over-identified with that and then they don't grow beyond that. Right. And so they get so focused on, I'm an alcoholic, I'm self-centered, I must do these things, I must shed that from myself.
Right.
But ultimately I can never shed it because it's a lifelong thing and blah, 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 which I agree with in a sense that it's a lifelong thing and that it is an illness, psychological illness, spiritual illness. Although that doesn't mean that you can't recover from that and live a healthy and full and meaningful life. But I think that comes from shedding the identity of being an alcoholic.
Right.
And we're getting a little bit sidetracked here, but from at least the resentment inventory, but I do think it matters.
Yeah.
So maybe we should go back.
But I guess here there's the practical insight we're getting at is not over-identifying with identifying the problems we have and the things we're struggling with and resentful towards and the effects that resentment is having on us, but not over-identifying with them.
Yes.
And reminding us that we have this little inner core that might be overshadowed by some of these struggles. And we're trying to actually remove those struggles so we can return to our true selves or realize our fullest potential.
Yeah. That's a nice way to say it.
Okay. So whether it's an addictive, whether it's a victim narrative or an addiction narrative, you can say you have these tendencies, but not giving that identity too much weight.
Yeah.
To the point where it's actually immovable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it becomes its own barrier to enlightenment.
Well, it's limiting.
It's limiting. Yeah.
It sets a ceiling.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe a small anecdote, I think for me, that exploring, and many people do this in the rooms, right? Exploring other spiritual practices, other ways of healing and I guess becoming more introspective and all those kind of things was really important to me. So I sort of wasn't part of AA and these programs for 5 years or so, maybe a little bit, I don't know, whatever. I mean, I was a little bit here and there, but I was doing other work and other explorations and other stuff, trying to shed that. Maybe not trying to shed that, trying to grow beyond my understanding of how this applies to my life and learn other skills and other tools. And I think when you see people who have that combination of things, they tend to be more admirable or just a little bit more free.
Successful?
Yeah, maybe.
So multiple therapeutic modes or modalities or approaches.
Yeah, or
not over-identified, like, oh, I'm just in AA. I just do CBT or whatever. Yeah.
And maybe it doesn't also have to be therapy per se, right? It could be philosophy like Buddhism or Stoicism or whatever it is.
Like you're pulling the positives, whatever's useful for you, you're pulling out of a sort of a diverse toolkit.
Yeah.
With diverse origins. Okay.
Yeah. And maybe just a short plug, which do all have moral and ethical foundations for human behavior in them. And one of David's specialties is human rights and things like that. So next time we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
So back to, you asked, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
Right?
What do
we do with this? Or what's a way to address these resentments, right? So in the last column here, in an AA context, I think I changed the words a little bit, but what's my part in this situation? Or what can I do to reduce the likelihood of this pattern repeating?
Okay.
So for our avatar who's resentful at capitalism, and they have taken the time to do some introspection and recognize, okay, maybe capitalism isn't 100% to blame. Let's say it's 50%. That's progress. What might that person do to reduce the likelihood of them blaming the world for their problems and addressing their resentments? And we've talked about it in many ways, right? But that's, you might say, I can recognize that it's not all capitalism's, mind my spelling, fault, right? I have a part to play by cleaning myself up or showing some humility and getting a low-paying job and learning, how to work my way up the ladder. Or what else could you say?
You could also, maybe I'm thinking, so you can define society, like maybe it's there's a bit of a perspective change. Yes, our society is capitalist, but also, largely democratic and free, which allows me to do a variety of different things. So I don't need to be a corporate banker. I don't need to be in a job that I would consider exploitative to others. I could actually go work for a nonprofit. I could volunteer. I could work at a soup kitchen. I could do things that directly address some of the problems that I see being caused by capitalism.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah.
So that would probably be like, if you're worried about something, you see a problem out there, it's one thing to be resentful at it and angry, and in many ways maybe it's justified. Probably the next step would be like, all right, let's actually start to tackle
that's
it.
Great. That's great. Yeah, great. And again, this isn't about being, writing a textbook on our resentments and all that stuff, which again, that might be useful and helpful for people. Really, it's about, I think I shared in the first video, I probably had like 200 things on this list. And so the goal was just get them out of my head onto paper, reflect on them, share them with another human being, which was my sponsor. That's how it's sort of suggested that you do it, or a therapist or whatever, and recognize my part in the situation. And again, it's not, though a situation had not been entirely our fault. It's not about justifying bullshit. It's about how do I regain power and agency in my life so that I can be more free?
Right.
I'm trying to think of what do you see or hear as a common target of resentment, and maybe in relation. So maybe it's parents, maybe it's spouses, maybe it's siblings, maybe it's teachers, or certainly that was a one for me too.
So one thing, it's sort of, I mean, this is going back to the point you made about like before you identify solutions, you actually want to like inventory all of the resentments because then you can see they, like you said, they have a similar structure. So I was, I work with at U of T, I meet with and I try to help a lot of students who, by third and fourth year are like very frustrated with, like you said, their political science degree, the extent to which the universities help them. They start fourth year and like, what am I going to do next? This institution hasn't pushed me forward. My professors aren't helpful. The career center is useless to me. Like so there's a lot of resentment at maybe not capitalism, but at the educational system. Some kind of system. So I'm resentful at the system. It could be capitalism. It could replace that. It could be I'm resentful at the University of Toronto or TMU or York University or whatever school you go to, or George Brown or Huron, wherever you go. You could be like, this school has not helped me and it's holding me back and I've wasted all this money and time. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that really needs to be, I guess, action. Like students it's always very useful to action that and to go through this method of, okay, I'm resentful at this. This is where I feel like things have let me down, and why, and the effect it's had on me. And then what am I going to do moving forward?
Right. So maybe, so some of the, it impacts our ambitions, our self-esteem, our, I can't remember, pride, whatever, emotional security, financial security, all those things. And that's valid again, right? It's okay that you're fearful of all these things or that they're impacting you. Again, it just goes back to that simple question of, okay, well, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Do you want to sit and be miserable and ineffective? Or do you want to live somewhat of a meaningful life? And this is tying in another idea, but meaning and purpose is found in the, as Jordan Peterson would say, the voluntary acceptance of the responsibility of the reality of your situation. So it's willingly and openly accepting, and it's not just Jordan Peterson that says that, but to use him as a cultural example, that is the spiritual message of most traditions and certainly Western civilization is, yes, this is all true and difficult. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
And can you do something about it morally and ethically to the best of your ability? And to stop thinking about yourself all the time.
Right.
But as a young student and a young person, that's legit. Again, it's not about not validating their fears. It's just like, what are you going to do about it? And that's a hard thing to accept often.
No, taking it's hard.
It is hard.
It is to feel like the students I meet with, they're we're on the same page in the sense that I try my best to, because I was that student too. Like I'm often not really sure, and I know I will be in the future, where you're sort of annoyed with something or feel like you're not doing what you want to do and certain things are getting in your way and you want to come up with a good strategy to move forward. But taking action is scary. Sometimes there's some safety in just being upset. But ultimately it does feel better. So I'll work with students who are like, all right, how do I translate my degree into a job? And they're like, there's no way, this is a totally irrelevant degree and I haven't learned anything. And I'm like, and once you once you start having a conversation with them about, well, let's actually talk about some of the things you've done in class. They're like, oh yeah, I can read a complicated text. I can write. I can give a presentation. I could analyze data. I can make sense of a statistical study in a basic way. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's something like a consulting firm would want. That's something that a ministry and government would want. That's something that a human rights NGO might want. And they're like, oh, okay. And maybe there's a lot more that we have to us. Often when we reflect, it's easier to, it's easy to say like, I got nothing, but it takes a bit of work to identify those things we do have. And it becomes actually very exciting to put them into action.
Right.
So
that's great. And I'm glad you brought that up because to one of your earlier questions, which we didn't fully cover because it's not really part of that inventory process, although it can happen after, is often our shortcomings also have a positive side to them. And so part of it is learning about your qualities and to be grateful and all those other kind of things. Although until we really look at the darkness or the shadow or whatever it is that's keeping us stuck, it's very hard to then see all the positive side of things because we just get so stuck in it. And so that part of that process is, as I mentioned, it's so freeing and liberating. Oh my God, look at all this garbage that I'm feeding myself. It's so unhelpful and it's making me sick and angry and resentful. Ugh, like blah, it's horrible. Then I can see, oh, okay, I can let a bit of that go. Oh, look at all these things that I do have, or look at my qualities, look at what I am good at.
Right.
Just what you said, like, look at all the skills I do have or have learned, and how might I apply those to X or the next job or the next opportunity or the whatever. And that again is super empowering.
Right.
And that's where, again, whether or not it sort of leads to financial success, I don't know about that. That doesn't matter, as opposed to just being a bit more free and empowered and healthy psychologically, which generally leads to physical health too.
Yeah. And I think it's like just off camera, Mike, you and I were talking about this, the importance of identifying one's accomplishments, no matter how small. Like, so, you picked up some poop this morning.
Yep.
That's something that, like, your little, your diary of accomplishments, you can say, like, you took the right path in that moment, because it's so easily you could have just stepped over it and said, like, who's running this place here? Right, why aren't they doing their job?
Yeah.
Just another reason for me to be pissed and upset this morning.
Yeah, right.
But
in fairness, that voice will pop into my head again of you're so lower class or like less important. You picked up that poo. Like, that's my little fucking devilish voice.
Right.
That will pop up from time to time. But sorry, yeah.
But no, but like, I mean, like so a lot of the conversations I have with students, and I tell them, as much as I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself about, like, recognizing those little victories each day and saying, oh, and it could be something really small. Like when I was responding to all of my emails, I wasn't once distracted and going off to do something else. Like, oh, maybe I'll just check the news quickly, like, okay, what's on YouTube? Or like go to the fridge or something, just something that I was just like, all right, I'm just going to get these emails done. I'm going to be as focused. And I was like, okay, that's an accomplishment. That's great. I find those kinds of conversations, those kinds can be very, people will be surprised at how much they've actually done that's good. Yeah. So much of us are on autopilot that we're not even recognizing that we actually are capable of some awesome things, like, every day, and we do great things every day. And it's so easily brushed aside. And I think that's a problem, because then it can breed resentment, and it can breed this idea that we're not good enough, and that, and we're not good enough because of what other people have done to us, and there's nothing to us. We have no agency or power. But if we think about ourselves as, little accomplishers, I think it can be very motivating. And I think for me, like, when I started doing, like, work with shelter dogs, whenever I'm sort of down on myself, I find teaching emotionally stressful. Like, I'll give a lecture or lead a class, and I'm like, I don't know if I did a good job. I don't know if the students like me. Are they bored? Are they, one student left in the middle. Was I offensive? Like, all that stuff, it goes, right? It can get to you. And I'll have to remind myself, like, hold on, no, you're not such a loser. You've done some decent things. Are you perfect? No. Are you going to be the right teacher for every student? No, that's okay. But you've done good things in the past. You had some good teaching evaluations. You've, rehabilitated a few dogs and done a great job with that. And then I'm like, okay, I can do good. Like, let's keep moving forward. I think when we don't reflect on our accomplishments, life can be very challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's nothing else powering us. Like, what's our, we need to plug in sometimes.
Yeah. And to add on to that, and that's so nice. Thank you for that wisdom. I mean, I had some accomplishments in my life while in active addiction and stuff like that. But one thing that really was empowering for me was going through that resentment and going through the steps of AA and therapy. I was in therapy too. That gives you a sense of accomplishment, right? So this is going back into the mental health side of things, or is the self-loathing and the sort of ruminating and the self-centered thinking that gets healed by going through these actions and motions. And I do remember sort of coming to this realization that, okay, my life, I was married. I had made millions of dollars playing poker. I had put on some of the world's biggest concerts, outside of like Woodstock kind of idea, but big concerts. And okay, so I'm capable of something, but ultimately I was still so sick and unwell. By taking care of myself and taking actions, being responsible, even for little things, like it's sort of that balance of only addicts want a pat on the back for things normal people do. Like just getting sober and being a normal, quote unquote, person was an accomplishment, right? 100%. And for me, it was an accomplishment. And so that helped me build on, right? So if you're a student in university, it's like, the future is going to be hard, and maybe you're doing a degree that's not as economically feasible as others, but at least you've done something. And it's like sort of just to what you were saying, like to see the accomplishments, to be able to acknowledge our goodness and our progress is wonderful. And that's a big piece of the puzzle. Yeah,
I totally agree.
So thank you, everybody. We're going to wrap it up.
Oh, yeah.
Or do you have anything else to say about the resentment stuff?
Just appreciative of this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so everybody, please like, comment, subscribe, send emails. The information is in the show notes always about how to contact us. So that was our discussion on resentment, on responsibility, on
accomplishments.
Thank you. Yeah. And we hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be back next time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Dave. I am very grateful that you watched to the end of this video. Please click one of the boxes to watch more of our content. And otherwise, have a great day. Peace out.